Sanchez, and my thesis is entitled Going with the Flow, Coping with the Mental Health Consequences of the COVID-19 Pandemic in Tai Chi. So in the past 16 months since the virus has been declared a pandemic, three major health consequences could be summed into stress, loneliness, and fear of concern. These three major consequences have been shown over the years, especially this past year, to have various negative downstream consequences. And stress particularly can also be influenced by different factors. For example, women are more likely to be stressed than men, or younger populations are also more likely to experience stress. And the stress is increased also with the lockdown conditions that we're not sure when they come or when they go. Internal, so fear or worry can lead to some other consequences like OCD-like symptoms in universities. This has been found in China. Or with loneliness, we can see that in this past year of social isolation because of social distancing measures, it's been considered a paradox because the one thing that we're doing to protect one another from infection also makes us feel isolated. This chronic loneliness could then lead to some immune deficiencies or some mental health consequences like depression. And then the question arises, what can we do about these consequences? And a good way to address these consequences is through the practice of Tai Chi Chuan. So Tai Chi Chuan is an internal martial art, and it tries to bridge the gap between the mind and the body through breathing. So we're trying to bring awareness to our own thoughts and our field in our body. Tai Chi has been studied through the years, mostly with the physical lens for people that have different diseases or physical limitations. So psychological outcomes are typically secondary goals. But we do find that people that practice Tai Chi can effectively decrease their stress even after 1 hour of practice. Or we also find that practicing Tai Chi through the years could help boost immune functioning with or without the presence of a vaccine. And we can also see some psychosocial benefits practicing Tai Chi. For example, there is a group called the Hidden Elderly, which are elderly people that are isolated from the rest of the community, and through the practice of Tai Chi, they were able to form friendships, so decreasing loneliness and increasing social support, having a social support network to be able to count on. So we can see that Tai Chi can address these three previous themes that I mentioned before: stress, fear, concern, and loneliness, which brings us to the hypotheses. So people, I hypothesize that people that practice Tai Chi are would probably receive less stress than people that do not practice Tai Chi, that they would also experience less concern over the coronavirus than people that do not practice Tai Chi, that they would experience less loneliness, and more social support those that do not practice Tai Chi. So the data was obtained through a global project called the COVID Stress Global Survey by Legal Authentic colleagues. And the data was collected from March to June, but the current data that I used was from May. And the participants were a total of 365, 139 of which were from the International Tai Chi Chuan Association Italia. The leader of the school, the Master Carlo Lopez, he had lessons available for all of the students during the lockdown situation, freely available for all members of the school. And whereas people that do not practice Tai Chi were a total of 226. So the measurements used were perceived stress, loneliness, and social support scales that were present before. Novel measurement was concerns over the coronavirus, which were created by Lieberoff and colleagues. For example, it asked to what degree are you concerned about the coronavirus for your family or for yourself or for your friends and neighbors and things like that. So the major results were that there were no obvious or significant differences in stress between people that practice Tai Chi and those who don't, which is the top left corner. There was no significant difference in loneliness, which is the top right corner, but there was a significant difference in social support, in that people that practice Tai Chi experience significantly more social support than those that do not, which is the lower left corner. And also people that practice Tai Chi also experience less concern over the coronavirus than those that do not practice Tai Chi, which is the lower right corner. So, since there were no obvious significant differences between these two groups in stress, we also performed a general linear model to see what were the antecedents of stress, what could be the factors that could help or hinder this stress. And we found that there was an interaction between loneliness and Tai Chi, and that for people that experience positive levels of loneliness, is from here. If they practice Tai Chi, they experience lower levels of stress. And if they don't, they experience higher levels of stress. So this helps shed some light on the relationship that there was an interconnection of these three factors. So we found that one of the hypotheses was fully supported in that people that practice Tai Chi are less concerned about the coronavirus than those that do not practice Tai Chi. Probably because of some of these immune boosts that practice could give, or who knows. But we found that Tai Chi, loneliness, and stress are very intertwined, and that we found the effects of the practice on stress if we considered also loneliness as one of the factors. So for those that do experience loneliness, practicing Tai Chi can help decrease stress. We also found that social support was significantly different between the groups, but we're not sure if this actually helped to buffer the effects of stress or not. So some of the limitations in the study were that we don't know, for example, what kind of practices people that don't report practicing Tai Chi may have adopted during the pandemic because they didn't report this. And we also don't know how often people that did practice Tai Chi actually practiced it. For example, there was one study that found that people that had about a participation rate of 61% didn't show any mental health benefits from the practice, probably because they didn't engage much with the practice to be able to get those positive benefits. So the future studies could explore, for example, how often people practice Tai Chi, how engaged they are, to see if this has an effect on the benefits, and if there are any differences between practicing online or in person. Obviously, because of the lockdown restrictions, all of these people were practicing at home, online, not in person, like they were used to doing, like at the park or in the center where they could interact with their fellow practitioners. So future projects could probably explore the difference between these and some other type of coping mechanisms. Thank you.
Finito, perfetto.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
So question from the committee?
I'm satisfied with the presentation, so I leave the floor directly to you.
Thank you very much. interest. I appreciate the unique approach you use to this topic that has been widely explored, but not within this frame. And I would like to address you just 2 points of reflections. You consider Tai Chi as a problem-focused coping strategy for its use relaxation technique. But on the other hand, you stress the importance of the social dimension of this practice. So I would like to ask you if you are able and been able to distinguish the specific contribution of the technique, or if you consider it important, because obviously social dimension is specific, not so specific of Tai Chi, is widely a dimension that is present in other practice. So I wonder if it is possible to have some consideration about the specific topic of relaxation techniques. That's the first question.
So you mean to tease apart the social from the strictly relaxation technique? If there's a way to...
Have you considered this aspect or?
Sure, yeah, there's Tai Chi, yes, it's at its base, mostly relaxation technique that practice also on your own, focusing on breathing, all of these elements, listening to oneself. It's a very meditative practice. So this is at its roots, the benefits of the practice. And then, yes, everything else kind of adds itself in. For example, practicing in a group, but it's inevitable to then also have this group identity that you share and that guides you through your practice. But yes, at its roots, it's a relaxation technique that, should I say, is based on those basic principles. Everything else is added as a consequence.
Okay, thank you. And another question, I want just to reflect about your, you say that Chi participants are reported to be significantly less worried about the coronavirus pandemic. And they say that maybe it's why they may have been aware of changes in their own immune system after years of practice. And I just want to know something about this, and if you have any other explanation about this data.
About the relationship between the lack of worry and the boosts. Yeah, and one of the things that we learned when practicing Tai Chi is that everything is a cycle. For example, in this slide with the symbol turning, this is also why I entitled it Going with the Flow. This is a situation where there's this, we must be home, we must protect ourselves, we must kind of retreat within. And so we hope that one day it'll also come back to a normality or to a different kind of situation where we can come back into relationships now. So we know we have to retreat for a moment, and then we come back, even if we don't consider the immune boosts, the physical benefits of Tai Chi, the physiological benefits. If we consider also just philosophically that, okay, now we have this situation and one day we'll come out of the situation, I feel like that could also had a very strong basis in why most of these people were concerned about the virus, because they thought, okay, now we must meditate, and one day we hope to come out of this the other side.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No. Thank you.
Thank you.
Discussion.
Sheila Sanchez. The committee has appreciated your work and gave very positive evaluation. In the name of the law and for the powers that have been given to this committee by our rector, you are awarded a Master's degree in Applied Experimental Psychological Science with a graduation grade of 110 over 110. Congratulations.